Okay, with the technical difficulties resolved, we will call the Town of Somerville Planning Commission for August 18th, 2025 into order. The first order of business is the approval of minutes from our meeting on July 21st, 2025. Are there any additions, corrections, changes to be made?
No.
Hearing none, we'll accept them as published. Next order is the presentation by the BCD COG about comprehensive plan update.
Hello, Planning Commission. My name is Wyatt Stately. I'm with the BCD COG. I'm a planner, and Megan back there is the Assistant Planning Director. Both of us are with the COG. While we're waiting on the presentation to come up, we are currently working with the Town of Somerville on updating their the 5-year review of the comprehensive plan. We will be going over the kickoff meeting, the information tonight, and explain, why we're here, what we're going to be doing over the next year, and how this involves the Planning Commission, Town Council, and ultimately the residents of Somerville. I could pull it up. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Jesse, would it be appropriate to either push this to the end of our meeting or postpone it until next time?
That's it. And this move will be full.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back. Oh, maybe not. All right. As I mentioned, I'm Wyatt Slightly. I'm with the COG. We're going to be going over the comprehensive plan and the 5-year review process. The remote, yeah, if you don't mind. Maybe not. So during tonight's meeting, we're going to go over the project, the scope, the tentative schedule. We're going to look at the different components of the comprehensive plan, the purpose of the plan. We're going to look at some of the existing conditions, the updates. We're going to look at the discussion. We're going to discuss the differences between zoning and land use, and then we'll have a next steps. And so the tentative schedule right now is we're having the kickoff meeting in August. We had the kickoff meeting with town council last week. We're having the kickoff meeting for planning commission right now. We're going to have 2 open house meetings in the fall. During that time, we're also going to be drafting the plan, the internal document for review. Then we'll have 2 spring public open house meetings, and then we'll go into the final review and adoption process of the plan. So the purpose of the comprehensive plan, it is a policy document that provides a vision for the community and that guides the decisions and helps plan for the implementation tools that work to achieve this vision. So some of those implementation tools can include a capital improvement plan, which the town is currently in the works, the town budget, the zoning ordinance, land development ordinance or the UDO, and then any other town ordinances like the tree preservation ordinance or stormwater, floodplain management, that stuff. So currently the town adopted the 2020 comprehensive plan. That was a 10-year update of the comprehensive plan. We're currently doing a 5-year review of it. That means it's not going to be as detailed. We're going to just take a look at updating some of the stuff that the 2020 plan had in it, maybe adding some new components, making sure the priorities are still the same. But this is a state requirement based on, you get to update the plan every 5 years, do a full review every 10. So some of the components of a comprehensive plan, every 10-year review or every 10-year review, every 5-year update should have a vision statement, goals and objectives, an inventory of existing conditions, a needs assessment, and then an implementation plan and priority investments. As of 2020, the resiliency element is now a required element of those existing conditions, which brings it up to 9 total. The 2020 plan, Somerville's 2020 plan already had a resiliency component included in the natural resources element. So we'll just be taking that information and expanding upon it into its own element for this 5-year review. So the highlighted components are the ones that we'll be looking at for this review, focusing on for this review. So the goals and objectives, we'll be looking to see if any priorities have changed, anything that needs to be adjusted based on new information. We're going to look at the inventory of existing conditions. Like I said, now there are 9 of them. And then we'll be looking at the implementation plan and priority investments. So we'll be looking at the future land use, the action plan, and then like I said, the priorities. And so this 5-year review will have a focus on the future land use map, future land use planning, all of which will be in the implementation part. So as I mentioned, we will have 2 rounds of public meetings. 2 of them will be in the fall, 2 of them will be in the spring. We don't have set dates for either of those or any of the meetings, but we are currently in the works with coordinating with the town staff on scheduling the fall open houses. The BCDCOG staff will periodically present at council and or planning commission meetings. And then any information in between that planning commission, town council, residents request should be directed to the town staff, and then they can, coordinate with us. They might already have the answer, which would be great. And then per state code, a public hearing will be held prior to the adoption of the plan. And again, that's tentatively scheduled for spring of 26. So the existing conditions, a lot of the existing conditions were part of the original 1994 Comprehensive Planning Act. Since then, they've expanded upon a few of them. As I mentioned, resiliency being the newest one required in 2020. The 2020 plan, the comprehensive plan, focused a lot on planning concepts, ideas, practices that are most of them are still relevant today, right? The 2020 plan was a great plan. It was very detailed. This 5-year review will be updating some of those concepts, but a lot of them don't really change, right? They're, best practices. They've been, they're time tested. So we're just going to be focusing on a lot of the data portion of the update, right? So population, demographics, economic, housing, all of the data associated with those. That's what we'll be focusing on for this 5-year review, more so than the, updating the concepts, because, they haven't really changed as much. So the 9 elements are population, housing, economic development, community facilities, transportation, cultural resources, natural resources, resiliency, and land use. So some of the demographic trends that we've seen over the past 15 years. So the town of Summerville has gained about 10,000 residents, 5,000 households, 3,000 families. The median age has increased by 5 years, which is pretty high, but not as high as some other places around here. 34% now identify with a minority group. And then the median household income increased by 48%. And all of that is between 2010 and 2025. So some of the socioeconomic trends, the town had gained 9,000 employed residents. The participation rate is now 68%. It was 66% back in 2010. And then the mean travel time to work in 2023 was 30.1 minutes, which is a 3-minute increase since 2010. And you can see on the right, the commuter flow. So this is looking at the inflow of people who commute to Summerville. So they live elsewhere but work in town. You can see that that's the darker green. The middle section are the people who live and work inside of Summerville. And then the lighter green are the people who live in Summerville but then commute elsewhere. And that was on 2022. Because we're focusing on some of the more data aspects of the comprehensive plan and the trends, we're going to include a few additional analyses that we wanted to make sure that we include because they provide a little bit more of a story behind the data that we're going to be looking at in the economic and housing population. So we're going to look at an employment shift share analysis, an industry location quotient, and then we're going to look at the social vulnerability index, which is related to resiliency. And before I move on any further, are there any questions on the comprehensive planning process? I know I went through that very, very quickly, but I believe we were informed that some of you were part of the 2020 plan, that whole process, so you're probably pretty familiar with it. we're going to be working very closely together in the next year. So this is just a kickoff meeting to expose you to what we're going to be doing. So before I move on, are there any questions? No. All right. Well, as I mentioned, we're going to be going into a quick discussion on the distinction between land use and zoning, how they relate to one another. This was requested by the town staff to make sure that we are walking the line between what is the difference between zoning and land use. When we do a comprehensive plan update, a lot of the times the public perception is you're changing my zoning. And that's not necessarily the case. This is more of the vision. This is a guideline, an advisory document, not necessarily zoning rechanges, right? That's a totally separate plan. And so that's what we're going to be discussing now. A lot of technical difficulty, no. Thank you. So in the before I begin, the chart is on the top is just an example of what I'll be talking about. We wanted to provide kind of a visual for everyone to follow along as we explain this. It can be very confusing because they are so closely related, which is why they often get confused. So land use is a way a piece of land is used, right? That it can be a pretty basic definition. However, there can be hundreds of different land uses, right? If you have a gas station with a drive-through, single family residential, single family detached, single family attached, there's so many different land use categories or land uses that we often group them into categories such as residential, commercial, industrial, conservation. So in the example at the top, you can see we provided a single family residential land use. That is a generic land use that you can see as it goes through the chart. It relates to the future land use and zoning. So as part of the comprehensive planning process, we will assign future land use designations. So those are built upon by, we take into consideration the existing land use of the parcels on the ground. We look at public input. We look at transportation, natural resources, economic factors, housing. We look at all of those trends and conditions, and we form a future land use map that reflects the vision of the community. So oftentimes we talk about all these ideas, but they're not assigned anywhere, right? Their ideas are great, but if they don't have like any geography to them, then it kind of falls on deaf ears. So that's what the future land use map is for: is to take some of these ideas and start putting them in places, putting them on a map, so that way when 2 or 3 years down the road, you're like, all right, we had this great idea, where did we want to implement it? Let's look at the future land use map. And so future land use maps are often back when they were first developed, when the 1994, when all the comprehensive plans were required. If you had zoning, you had to have a comprehensive plan. They often became very parcel based. And a lot of times the future land use map became the zoning map, which I think is part of the reason why they get so confusing. Nowadays, we are trying to move away from the parcel by parcel base and do a more of a generalized future land use map that has more blobs kind of areas rather than like specific hardline parcel areas, right? This allows for the town to have more flexibility and looking at a parcel and be like, does this fit with the character of the area? Yes or no, right? Rather than if it's like a hard line of like, this is one thing or the other. So that's the idea of doing these more generalized blob areas. We look at the character, the compatibility of the uses, maybe the history of the area, all of that to, inform us on like, all right, how should this area be future land use? What is the vision of this area? And so now we get into how that relates to zoning. So in contrast to the future land use map, where it should be kind of more broad, a little bit more general, a little bit more flexible, zoning is more specific, right? Zoning is a regulatory document. It has legal weight behind it. And zoning districts say you can or cannot put a land use here. Or there are permissible land uses, conditional, special exception, permitted by right. You're very well familiar with that. That is the biggest difference between future land use and zoning is the regulatory aspect. Future land use is not, does not have much legal weight behind it, whereas zoning does. And the specificity of the zoning allows for certain uses to be permitted in one district or another. So that leads us to having multiple zoning districts could fall under one land use. So you can see in the example that the single family residential is the land use. That can be found, like the character fits in traditional residential or neighborhood mixed use. And then that use could be permitted by right in the zoning low density residential 1, and general commercial 1. And that low density residential 1 zoning district can fall under 2 different land use categories. Even though it's the same district, it can kind of span different future land uses based on the character, right? So that's something that we'll be going into much later on during the process. We'll have a future land use workshop later on in the I think the fall, maybe winterish timeframe. And we'll get into the details of, all right, what is the relationship between future land use, future land use zoning? How does this influence the planning process moving forward? How does this influence your role as planning commission moving forward? Which leads me to this. The future land use map is supposed to inform future zoning updates. So you can see in the graphic, the comprehensive plan, as I mentioned, is an advisory document, or zoning ordinance is a regulatory document. The comprehensive plan identifies goals, objectives, a vision, and the zoning ordinance is an implementation tool on how to enact that vision. So the future land use map, you can see, identifies different land use patterns that can be based on the compatibility of the land uses, the character. If you want to focus more on conservation, more on historic preservation, that's where the future land use comes into play. And then the zoning map is what dictates, is what determines what can actually be permissible in that area. The future land use map is supposed to guide future zoning updates, but it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be a guidance, exactly that, not dictate it. And then you can see that there are going to be future land use categories. They will overlap with the zoning districts. They may even be very, very similar, but they are 2 different kind of concepts, right? The future land use is more advisory. The zoning is more regulatory. So this is a comparison. This is a map comparison. So on the left is the 2020 future land use map. And then on the right is the it's the most current zoning map for the town. So we just wanted to throw this up on the screen to kind of give you a comparison of what the future land use map currently looks like, what the zoning currently looks like, because this will be, a key discussion point when we talk about the future land use map in the future when we do our land use workshop. Before we go in the next steps, are there any questions on land use, zoning, kind of the comparison, the process? All right. So the next steps, we will continue to gather information and data on the existing conditions. A lot of the information that we compile will be then used for the open house meetings. We'll be looking at the priorities from the current 2020 plan and then presenting those to see if they're still the priority. We'll be scheduling those 2 open house meetings in the fall, as I mentioned. And then we'll be continuing to work with town staff on reviewing these documents, making sure that the information that we're, compiling is accurate. A lot of the research we do ourselves, but we always want to double check, be like, are we missing anything? So we'll be coordinating with the town staff pretty closely on that over the next couple months. And then I believe we have a kind of a midway check-in point as our next. Well, we have our workshop, and then the next time we'll be coming to Planning Commission is the midway check-in point. So. Are there any questions? Any final questions? Nope. All right. Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Our next order of business is public hearings. The first is the ordinance to remove TMS number 13703050001, known as 500 North Main Street, from the historic district.
I'm gonna go ahead and call up the applicant or the owner to speak on behalf of
Okay.
the request.
Good afternoon. I am Jason Ward and I serve as the county administrator for Dorchester County, and we are the owners of the property. I do have with me a few members of county council, Mr. Crosby, Mr. Hearn. Not missing anybody else. Very briefly, we're here before you to request that the property be removed from the historic district. The property is zoned downtown mixed use and has been since 2019. Prior to that, it also held a B3 business zoning within the town of Somerville. I think the important thing is we are looking to move forward with the project within the parameters of DMX, which would allow us to do retail, hotel, but also to preserve a large portion of the property, about 0.8 acres for a park, a pavilion, the Veterans Memorial being relocated, and to include the statue of our Medal of Honor winner, Sergeant First Class Solis. Beyond that, we've identified within the master plan to reduce multifamily units from 160 units all the way down to 0 and replace that with what we believe will be a good concept, which has been identified as something needed within the town, which is a boutique hotel, 100 Key. I know that Mr. Poppleton is here from the Furman Group. I'm glad to answer any questions. The only other thing I think that's important is the county does plan to retain its presence on the property in a new office building rather than investing a minimum of 15 million, but probably far exceeding that in order to renovate and try to reutilize the existing complex.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Neil?
Hmm.
Any questions?
Thank you, Jason. Well,
I'm going to apologize. We have a 5:15 county council committee meeting.
Oh.
So I will not remain beyond 4:45 in order to ensure that I am not late.
all right.
Then I have a question for you,
Yes.
Jason. Have you identified which of the office buildings the county would be occupying in this plan that we?
So in the plan that we have, it is the building that is located along Highway 78. It's approximately 40,000 square feet.
All right, any other questions for you? Nope. Thank you.
First for public comment is Hayward Hudson.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Removal of 500 North Main from the historic district is tantamount to approving the demolition of most, and if not all, of the old hospital. In a study paid for by the National Trust and the Somerville Preservation Society more than 30 years ago, it was determined that the building was sound and eligible for placement on the National Register of Historic Places. In 2012, Town Council voted to place it in the historic district to protect and preserve it. This is the fourth time that the County Council has proposed development plans that involve demolishing the whole building or desecrating it. The citizens of Somerville have responded overwhelmingly every time through petitions and even the recent discredited chamber survey that we want the building preserved. In a recent front page article of the Post and Courier, it was noted that the city of Charleston is spending $3 million to restore 2 smokestacks that were approved for demolition 5 years ago. And here we are considering a plan by the Furman Company and the county that at the very least would demolish most of that iconic building. The old hospital is in good shape after almost 90 years. It will last a lot longer than the proposed county office building. We own the federally funded 1937 old hospital. We incur indebtedness of 40 years with the ugly proposed county office building. This plan, as well as previous plans, is fraught with traffic, parking, congestion, and overdevelopment issues. Blighted and contaminated areas surround 500 North Main. Why not encourage redevelopment of the blighted areas while retaining the only green space between I-26 and downtown Somerville as a park, and keep the old hospital as a heritage and welcome center with shops, restaurants, event venues, and a meeting hall? Your colleagues on the BAR unanimously rejected previous Furman County plans. Please do the same by denying this request. Thank you.
Next, I have Mike Strecker.
Good afternoon. I'm the second vice president of Somerville Preservation Society and a retired architect. I'd like to address 2 specific points regarding 500 North Main. Before I begin, I'd like to refresh everyone on the purpose and intent of the historic district. Section 2.11.1 of the Unified Development Ordinance states, the town recognizes that the historic, cultural, and architectural resources and heritage of the town are among its most important assets. It is the purpose and intent of this district to provide a mechanism to identify, protect, and preserve the distinctive historic and architectural characteristics of the town. 500 North Main was placed in the historic district for this specific purpose. With that background in place, on to point 1. The county has made a restricted covenant a major selling point of their development plan. This covenant states that Dorchester County has agreed to require the developer of 500 North Main to record restrictive covenants which will preserve a portion of the county services building. However, the covenant states that any proposed improvements to the restricted facade of the hospital building will be planned to minimize impacts to its historic features, materials, and finishes. Let me repeat that. It will be planned. My interpretation of this is the developer could potentially report that they plan to keep those historic elements, but they were unable to for any reason they would like to use. Economics, poor materials, whatever they choose. Now, there's an enforcement paragraph in the covenant. Surely that'll prevent this scenario from happening. The enforcement paragraph states that if any person, firm, or corporation should violate or attempt to violate these covenants or any provision thereof, then the declarant shall have the opportunity to prosecute. Shall have. Who's the declarant? It's the county. So that means the county has the opportunity to possibly prosecute their developer for removing the historic elements. My second point has to do with zoning standards that will be applied if 500 North Main is removed from the historic district and revert back to DMX. Maximum density, not applicable. Required open space, 2% if 5 acres or more. 500 North Main is 5.34 acres, so that would require 4,600 square feet of open space. Perimeter buffer, none. Maximum lot coverage, 100%. Front and side setbacks, 0. I'd like to conclude by pointing out the county has presented a plan that has evolved and been significantly scaled back to answer the public outcry. That's all it is, a plan. Once 500 North Main is out of the historic district, all bets are off. Keep 500 Main in district where it belongs as one of the only 2 WPA projects in the town. Thank you.
Ron Mock.
Sometimes the old legs don't cooperate. I'm here to ask you to keep the old hospital in the historic district. If you look 3 blocks east on 78, where Berlin, G, and 78 come together, you see a huge complex going up. 4-story buildings going to be housing and other residences, maybe having 500, 600 people. There's going to be commercial space. We're going to have that 3 blocks from where this developer wants to do it. He's going to be out of business. The old hospital was built with WPA funds. It's a federal building. And contrary to what Town Councilman Bob Jackson said, it was probably one of the few integrated buildings in Somerville when it was built. 1937, being built with federal funds, it had to take Black patients as well as the white. That closed the hospital that was right next to it, the old Arthur B. Lee Hospital for Colored People that was in the next block south, run by Dr. Alston. And those Black patients went into the new federal building because it was integrated. And so it has been integrated, one of the first steps of Somerville public buildings to be integrated, long before the schools were integrated in 1970. The space is a beautiful space when you first enter the town from the north side. It should be kept with that building and facade, maybe for other uses, but I am here to ask you to please keep that building as it is without letting it be used for development for other means. It's being put to a good use now as a county building and perhaps for some other uses, but keeping within that same building. When I moved to Somerville from Philly, 1968, that hospital was still open. Didn't close till 1975 when Trident was built. Some of us in the Somerville Ministerial Association, hearing that there were patients in the old hospital, military patients, that had no pastor in the area. And we formed a voluntary chaplains from the Somerville Ministerial Association. And we would visit, as called upon by some of the hospital staff, to visit those who had no local pastor. So that was the beginning of volunteer chaplaincy, which went into Trident later on to continue that chaplaincy work until they got a paid chaplain. So there are many things associated with the old hospital building that ought to be preserved as historic. And I ask you to continue to keep it as an historic district within the town of Somerville. Thank you very much.
Adrian Quist.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission members. My name is Adrian Quist, and I have lived in Somerville since 1965. When I came here in 1965, there was no historic district and no preservation society. Fortunately, both of these organizations were established by the late Beth McIntosh and many others in 1972. After her death in 1986, retired Army Colonel Hayward Hudson has continued to protect and preserve treasured buildings of the past that we all have cherished and benefited from. It appears now that we have come to a crossroad that will drastically change Somerville with lots of proposed developments. I don't mind telling you that I am among many other citizens that have very strong feelings about this town, no matter what the so-called survey showed. I'm sick and infuriated what lies ahead by changing the rules and taking the old hospital out of the National Historic District. This is nothing more than a betrayal of Somerville, of Somerville's past. We are asking you today, as a planning commission, to put your foot down and oppose the move to take the old hospital out of the National Historic District. Thank you for your time.
William Button.
Yes, I'm here to ask y'all to keep the hospital in the historic district. It may be, you may be able to keep some of the changes from happening that are unnecessary changes. We've got a good building, and the best part about it, I was born there in 1949 and had plenty of relatives go there to be taken care of. I think it's a beautiful building and a beautiful location, and will keep some of our town from being overly congested with traffic and commercial buildings that really can be put elsewhere to better serve our population. Please keep the hospital in the historic district. Thank you.
Marshall Connor.
Commissioners, thank you very much. I'm probably the first person to speak on the other side of the issue, speaking on behalf of the Chamber's foundation. We have a foundation with the Somerville Chamber. And I just wanted to say, you know, this has been a long process. The developer has heard a lot of the concerns. And as I have listened over the last year and a half to what the concerns are and what we're trying to accomplish, I feel like we've seen a lot of growth in the plan. I think we've gone from one thing and it's changed to another. And I feel like we've gotten to a place now where what the vision of the town is and what the vision of the county and our whole region is looking like. It's time for us to look at where are we going to have smart growth. I know we're hearing about congestion and we're hearing about a lot of things, but having more people near downtown is important to the businesses downtown. Having more people who go to those restaurants, who go to those shops is important to the businesses of downtown Somerville. I have a personal story with the hospital. My very first experience with that hospital, I went to get my shots when I was going to kindergarten, and I have a lifelong fear of needles ever since then. I'm sure the nurse was very nice and she was very gentle, but I do remember that, and I do appreciate the fact that the county has taken so many steps to try to get the facade and the look and feel of the building to remain. And as I think about green spaces and all the things that Mr. Ward mentioned, I really do feel like we've gotten to a place where we have a plan that sounds like it works. It feels like it works, and it feels like it's cohesive with what Somerville, downtown Somerville, has the potential to be. I understand there are lots where things are already blighted and we feel like there could be some changes in those places. But you have to have a willing landowner to make those changes as well. And I think we've got a spot here where instead of having, 200 apartments or whatever the original plan was, they've gotten down to the boutique hotel, some shops, a county administration building, and also retaining the facade. I thank you for listening to me today, and I do appreciate all the other folks that have come out to speak on both sides of this issue. Thank you very much.
Rita Berry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Planning Commission. My name is Rita Berry, and I serve as the President and CEO of the Greater Somerville Dorchester County Chamber of Commerce. And I'm here this afternoon on behalf of our Chamber Board of Directors, and I'd like to speak to the focus of infrastructure impact and smart growth. And we feel that this is a chance to plan for our future and not be overwhelmed by it. A balanced redevelopment plan will now reduce reactive infrastructure spending later. By integrating office space, retail, amenities into this project, we will potentially reduce long commuting time and cut down on traffic flow across and out of the town, not to mention that this redevelopment is expected to provide additional funding that can go towards streetscaping and improvements to Main Street and Cedar Street corridors. Thoughtful housing opportunities help meet a critical need of those who work and live in our community. Giving people the opportunity to live and work right here in Somerville eases congestion and supports local infrastructure needs. This means less traffic, more money staying local, and an opportunity for residents to get back their commute time to invest to other important areas of their lives like their family and community impact work, etc. We feel smart growth, purposeful, compact, and designed to meet both current and future needs. Similar to how Hutchinson Square was redeveloped with charm and character and has continued to meet our growing community needs. Can you imagine Somerville today without that redevelopment of Hutchinson Square? Hutchinson Square was not always as beautiful as it is today, but it took thoughtful leadership coupled with vision and planning to give us the heart of the town that we so greatly cherish today. And our support of removing the property from the historic district does not at all mean that we wish for it to be demolished, but instead have the heart restored and repurposed for something that will serve our community in a meaningful and impactful way for generations to come. Thank you.
Chris Kaler.
Good afternoon, Commission members. Thanks for having us today. I'm Chris Kaler. I'm the current chair of the Chamber of Commerce, and I'll be speaking on the gateway coming into town. The county's proposed plan and the Chamber's position, board position, align with recurring themes that we're seeing in our vision plan that's currently being developed. That plan and survey, if you do know, are completely separate from the survey that we did for 500 North Main. Shameless plug, there's two community briefings next week, one in St. George on Tuesday and one here in this room in Town Council on Wednesday evening, 5:30, to hear where we are currently, the draft of the outline for the vision plan. The priorities that we're seeing and hearing from the over 3,200 people that filled out the vision plan surveys are thoughtful planning, housing variety, vibrant gateways, distinct places, targeted economic growth, entrepreneurial culture, and top-tier schools. And we're seeing that everything that the county has in their plan satisfies a lot of those topics. So that's why we're engaged and excited to see something happen here. With 500 North Main, you had the rare opportunity to enhance the gateway into town, especially when considering this project in conjunction with the proposed revitalization of North Main Street from this block down into Hutchinson Square. This property can also set the tone for welcoming residents, visitors, and future investors into town. You have a chance to lead with excellence, turning an existing single-use block into a space that inspires community pride, includes green space and public use areas, and preserves significant historic elements. Bringing that block to life will draw people in, encourage investment, and reinforce Somerville's dream. Doing nothing should not be an option. Action is required to meet the community's expectations for both preservation and progress. Preservation and thoughtful redevelopment can coexist. Redevelopment will bring significant economic benefits. These funds will support public improvements across the town, county, and the school districts, enhancing schools, infrastructure, the business climate, and the quality of life for all. Removing the building and property from the historic district is critical to enabling meaningful redevelopment while maintaining community character. So we hope that your vote tonight is in favor of removal of this property from the historic district. Thank you very much.
Robert Poppleton.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm here representing the Furman Company, the development partner for Dorchester County. And I want to start by saying that I'm thankful for several things. One is the air conditioning in this room. Last month, it was not this cool and comfortable. But I also want to thank members of this commission. I want to thank town staff. I want to thank town council, and importantly, the members that make up this community. From the very beginning, we have approached 500 North Main with a commitment to listen, to learn, to understand the priorities of this community. Just to depart from my prepared comments for 1 minute, I do want to make mention that the Furman Company is a 135-year-old development firm based in South Carolina. And I apologize on behalf of developers that may have been in this community and didn't treat you right. But when we say something, we will follow through. And I hope our 135-year-old history is a testament to that. Town council has already showed its unanimous support by approving the application to remove this site from the historic district, and we take that alignment seriously. We know that decision is a recognition that this property needs to move forward into a new chapter for this town, one that balances progress and preservation. Throughout the time that we've been involved, our team has worked hard to react to the feedback and refine the plans time and time again. I hope you've seen that chronology that we provided to you this evening outlining that. I think where we've arrived is a better fit for this community. We've heard consistently and echoed strongly in the Chamber's survey this spring that there is a mandate that something needs to happen here. We want to get it right. Not just a neat development, but a thoughtful development that reflects Somerville's character. We also understand that there is a portion of the community that wants the property to remain unchanged. We respect that perspective. We also listen and have seen that the broader community supports moving forward. One of the areas for that support is that this plan protects and integrates key iconic historic elements of the historic property, while also achieving some of the broader objectives that this community has outlined in creating welcoming space for businesses and incubation and entrepreneur activities, new places of honor for the great citizens of this community, including Medal of Honor recipient that Mr. Ward referenced earlier. That balance, progress, and preservation has guided every step that we have taken. Thank you for your time. I'm here if you have any other questions.
Tommy Fagan.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here asking that you keep the old hospital in the historic district. That is a historic building. It's the bookends to our town. You have Hutchinson Square and you have the old hospital. All the other places in the state seems to be expanding their historical areas. Somerville's wanting to pull it out. You know, that 30 pieces of silver is going to come back to bite somebody someday. So, you know, we need to look where the county's wanting to put that building right on the corner. We got 78 section 3B going to substantially widen 78 out into the Berlin G. Where are people going to park to go to that county building to take care of your business? There's a lot of things going in there Nobody's planning for. Not only that, I can understand county council using that building because it was economically feasible, because it was a building already owned by the government. Now, all of our population seems to be running down Dorchester Road, out 165, Delmar Highway, out 17A. They need to take that county building and put it somewhere over by the high school or a little bit further out to serve all the constituents of the county and to take the traffic out of Somerville, which we're all plagued to death with. You can't go anywhere anymore. I would ask you to please, this is our home. We're not going to get a mulligan on this. We're not going to get a do-over. Once it's gone, it's gone. And you know, we might all wish we had it back before it's over with. We've got plastic next to them, just like Mount Plastic. Let's keep Somerville our home the way it is. Thank y'all.
Dora Ann Reeves? Nothing. Okay. Randall Sharpie?
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. I'm Randy Sharpie, and I'm not really organized, but I wanted to start by asking, I'm a little confused about the purpose for the meeting. The town has decided that it wants to remove 500 North Main. They've already voted. They didn't ask you as a group your opinion prior to that, right? Did it come before this committee prior to that?
No.
No. The last administration said people were fearful of the plans. They said, it's out of our hands. The BAR is going to make a decision on this. You know, our hands are tied. So when that was the situation, then it was decided to take it out of the hands of the BAR. And I'm also not really clear about this. I'm not sure if they are a town committee like you guys are.
Yes.
So what essentially they're asking you to do is to bypass another town, another city committee. So I don't understand. So what impact will your vote have on their decision? I mean,
Sir,
if you
sir,
vote,
Sir, this is going before them because the process to put this property in the historic district went to planning commission and 2 readings of council. And so to take it out, it's going to planning commission and 2
so
readings
you
of
all
council.
already voted on this?
No, sir, that's what they'll be voting on today.
Well, that's why I'm asking this. If they didn't ask you ahead of time,
It requires 2 readings by council. So it's gone once to council. It's come here for their recommendation. I'll go back to council.
But I understand that part of it. But what I'm asking is, if they did this without any guidance from the planning commission, what impact will their vote today have on that?
And I'm explaining to you the process. This is the same process for almost every ordinance. It can go to first reading of council first. That is allowed by law. And then it has to come to the planning commission before a second and final reading. Just
Okay.
because they vote on something first reading doesn't mean they'll vote the exact same way second reading.
Right. Thank you. So if this plan is approved at the second reading,
Thank you.
will these plans by the Furman Company come for your
Thank you, sir.
review?
No.
No?
Sir, I think you may need to come talk to staff after the meeting if you
Okay.
have questions
Well,
about the
I have
process.
some other things to say.
Well,
this-
your 3 minutes is up, sir.
Thank you.
Peter Gorman,
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. At this July meeting, the Town Council approved the first reading removal of the old hospital from the Historic District. The council put the cart before the horse, which is now essentially asking you to ratify that decision. I hope you can consider all the consequences and reach your own independent decision on this issue. Our BAR has repeatedly and unanimously rejected any demolition of the old hospital. The council decision is primarily based on the testimony offered by the Somerville Chamber of Commerce. They noted that the survey of almost 2,000 respondents asking them what to do about 500 North Main. They did not announce the results of that, but simply said doing nothing is not an option. I want to tell you what the public said in that survey. I obtained a copy of it and found that the public is opposed to demolition and development by a factor of almost 2 to 1. The survey asked 8 questions, and only 2 of which regarded preservation, 3 of which favored development, and 2 more regarded sort of irrelevant issues of parking and open space. It then asked for the first, second, and third choices from the respondents. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to distribute a copy of this survey results with my summation showing that the chamber was disingenuous and indeed embarrassed by the results of the survey. May I distribute copies of it to you? I've sorted the results into 2 groupings, as you can see on the cover sheet. The 2 questions regarding preservation and the 3 supporting demolition. From the highlighted percentages, you will see that the large majority support the preservation, and the remaining pages that are back up to that summation are the actual survey results. I ask you to deny this removal of the hospital based upon the public's strong desire to preserve the old hospital. Thank you.
Jason Russo, Barbara Simmons,
I know I'm not a good public speaker, but I am a person that loves this town, a person that votes.
Let's figure it out.
Can you hear me? Okay. But I care about what happens in this town, and I'm a voter too. And so I think that if you listen to what I have to say, along with many others, that we feel what's important to this town. I know that the Planning Commission does all the work, the research, discovers the pros and cons, both bad and good, and then make your recommendation to the council. And I feel that when the reasons that the Planning Committee had back in 2012 are much the same, except we've had a lot more growth and of course a lot more traffic congestion. And when people come to Somerville or any other town, they don't want to tour hospitals. They don't want to tour the hotels and the apartments. They want to learn and see the historic places. And that's what makes Somerville special and different. And I just, the location for all this plan that they have, I think is just wrong for Somerville. There must be better places to put all that than that area. Thank you.
Diane Frankenberger,
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak in front of you. I've been a resident of Somerville since 1967. We're a military family and we moved here, and we've lived a lot of places, and it was love at first sight for a lot of different reasons. We moved away and came back 5 times. I was fortunate enough to be able to buy Mr. and Mrs. Cawthon's old hardware store and redo that. I was also fortunate enough with a group of other people to purchase the old post office, which was the water company and is now the art center. I also participate in something called guerrilla gardening. It's when plots aren't kept up around town. I go and do it. And so far, nothing has happened. I did have to sign a piece of paper once from Mayor Collins saying if I got killed planting that tree there in front of the Timrod Library, I wouldn't sue the town. I say these things to you all because I do love Somerville and I care about it. I know that in the past, we had lots of hotels here that welcome people. I'm looking at my time. Kata McCoy and Rick Sutton were part of the group that redid the downtown. And we were asked the question, who do you want to be? They said, we want to be a hospitable town. I feel the proposed property, maybe it could be improved on, but I think it's the best thing there. And I'm going to just be really bold and courageous and say this. I would remove the hospital in its entirety and put something else there that maybe commemorated it or not. I think what belongs at that property is a parking garage. We need another parking garage downtown. Who would have thought that? There's nothing lovely about a bunch of asphalt. I agree that a county building should be located elsewhere. What you have plus what you need equals the item. By removing it from the BAR, it gives more choices. This is a good town with good people, with common sense and wisdom. And I will say this also, I really am offended by remarks that have been put on Facebook and in other places about people taking money and doing things that they ought not to have done. And I personally do not believe that to be the case. And I thank you for your time.
I do not have any others signed up for public comment.
All right. And we will close that public hearing and move to the next one is a proposed amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 13, Administration and Procedures, Section 13(2)(3), Town Council, subsection B, Appointments. I believe this is to add
This is just for the Cultural Arts District. We forgot to add it. Yeah, Cultural Arts Commission.
Did we have anybody sign up to speak?
No,
to
sir.
that? All right. There's no one wishing to speak to that. We'll close this public hearing and move to new business. Do I have any new street names?
We do not.
Oh, shucks. All right. Now moving to the ordinance to remove TMS number 137-03-05-001, known as 500 North Main Street from the Historic District. Do I have a motion?
Motion to deny.
I have a motion to deny. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Jesse, when the hospital was added to the historic district, was it not that we moved the entire historic district north of the railroad tracks all the way to 78? Or was that particular piece singled out, and is it the only piece that was added?
There were 3 properties that were added at that time. That the 500 North Main Street, I think it's like 106 186 North Palmetto, 104 North Palmetto, the church, small church on North Palmetto, and then the property on Stallsville Loop,
Okay.
225 Stallsville Loop. Those three properties were added in
I
2012.
remember all of those. Okay, thank you.
Lots. Anyone else? All right, I have a motion to deny. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Aye.
No, opposed.
I think it was. Let the motion to deny pass 3-2. All right, next order of business is a proposed amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 13, Administration and Procedures, Section 13.2.3, Town Council, subsection B, Appointments. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve this and send it to council.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. It's unanimous.
I do not have anything under miscellaneous.
And I will entertain a motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.